Imagine yourself in a cave, chained so that you can only see the wall in front of you. Behind you, a fire casts light, and between the fire and you, people carry objects, casting shadows on the wall. These shadows are all you've ever known. You believe them to be real, the true forms of things. This, in essence, is Plato's allegory of the cave, a cornerstone of Western philosophy, and a powerful starting point for exploring the elusive nature of reality. As Plato wrote in the Republic, "Imagine, then, I said, that there are people living in a cave." Plato's allegory serves as a potent metaphor for the human condition. Are we, like the cave dwellers, mistaking shadows for substance? Is the reality we perceive merely a limited and distorted projection of something far more profound and complex? Consider the limitations of our senses. Our eyes, for instance, perceive only a tiny fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum, a narrow band of visible light. We are blind to the vast realms of infrared, ultraviolet, radio waves, and gamma rays that permeate the universe. Our ears capture only a limited range of sound frequencies. Our sense of touch, taste, and smell are equally constrained, offering but a sliver of the sensory input that potentially exists. Our brain, the interpreter of these limited sensory inputs, further shapes our perception. It actively constructs our reality, filling in gaps, making assumptions, and filtering information based on past experiences, biases, and expectations. What we perceive as reality is therefore not a passive reception of objective truth, but an active construction, a personalized interpretation of limited data. Think about optical illusions. These visual tricks vividly demonstrate how easily our perception can be deceived. A simple line can appear bent or straight, depending on the context. Colors can shift their appearance based on surrounding hues. These illusions are not mere anomalies. They highlight the inherent subjectivity and constructivist nature of our perception. If our vision, arguably our most trusted sense, can be so readily fooled, what can we truly say about the reliability of our overall grasp on reality? Modern neuroscience further reinforces this notion. Studies of brain function reveal that our perception is not a direct recording of the external world, but rather a complex process of interpretation and prediction. Our brains are constantly making educated guesses about what is out there, based on incomplete sensory information and pre-existing neural models of the world. These models, while often useful for navigating our environment, are ultimately just that, models, not perfect reflections of reality itself. The implications of this illusory nature of perception are profound. If our senses and brains provide us with, at best, a filtered and constructed version of reality, how can we ever be certain that we are perceiving the true nature of things? Can we ever escape Plato's cave and see the world as it truly is, if such a true world even exists independently of our perception? This exploration of the illusory nature of reality is only the first step in our labyrinthine journey. In the parts to follow, we will delve deeper, venturing beyond the shadows on the wall, to explore the quantum veil, the subjective observer, the enigma of sentience, the interconnected web, and ultimately, the embrace of mystery itself. The path ahead is complex, uncertain, and endlessly fascinating. Having contemplated the shadows on the wall, the limitations of our senses, and the constructed nature of our perception in Part 1, we now venture beyond the familiar realm of classical physics into the enigmatic world of quantum mechanics. Here, the very fabric of reality seems to unravel, revealing a universe that defies our everyday intuitions and challenges our deepest assumptions about how things truly are. Classical physics, the physics of Newton and Maxwell, describes a universe that is deterministic, predictable, and objectively real. Objects have definite properties, existing independently of observation, and evolve in accordance with precise laws. A ball's trajectory, a planet's orbit, all are governed by predictable equations. This is the reality of our everyday experience, the world of cause and effect, of solid objects and well-defined trajectories. However, at the dawn of the 20th century, quantum mechanics emerged, shattering this classical worldview. Experiments at the atomic and subatomic level revealed a reality that is fundamentally probabilistic, uncertain, and observer-dependent. Particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously, superposition. Their properties are not defined until measured, and they can become instantaneously correlated even when separated by vast distances. Quantum entanglement. One of the central concepts of quantum mechanics is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. It states that there is a fundamental limit to the precision with which certain pairs of physical properties of a particle, known as complementary variables, such as position and momentum, can be known. The more accurately one property is known, the less accurately the other is known. This is not a limitation of our measuring instruments, but a fundamental property of nature itself. As Niels Bohr, one of the founding fathers of quantum mechanics, famously said, "If quantum mechanics hasn't profoundly shocked you, you haven't understood it yet." Consider the famous double-slit experiment. Electrons, when fired at a barrier with two slits, behave not as classical particles, going through one slit or the other, but as waves, interfering with each other and creating an interference pattern on a screen behind the barrier. Remarkably, if we try to observe which slit an electron goes through, the interference pattern disappears, and the electron behaves as a particle again. The very act of observation seems to collapse the wave function, forcing the electron to choose a definite state. This observer-dependent nature of quantum reality is one of its most perplexing aspects. In the classical world, the observer is considered to be separate from and independent of the observed system. In quantum mechanics, the observer becomes inextricably linked to the system, their act of measurement fundamentally altering the reality being measured. Does this mean that reality itself is, in some sense, created by observation? Quantum entanglement, another bizarre phenomenon, further challenges our classical intuitions. When two or more particles become entangled, their fates become intertwined in such a way that they are instantaneously correlated, regardless of the distance separating them. If you measure a property of one entangled particle, you instantly know the corresponding property of the other, even if they are light years apart. Einstein famously called this spooky action at a distance, because it seemed to violate the principle of locality, the idea that physical influences cannot travel faster than light. Quantum mechanics forces us to confront the limits of our classical understanding of reality. It suggests that the world at its most fundamental level is not composed of solid, definite objects moving in predictable trajectories, but rather of probabilistic waves of potentiality, shaped and actualized by observation. The quantum veil obscures a deeper, stranger reality that lies beneath the surface of our everyday experience, a reality where determinism gives way to probability, objectivity blurs with subjectivity, and interconnectedness reigns supreme. As we continue our exploration of the labyrinth of perception, we will see how these quantum insights resonate with and challenge philosophical understandings of consciousness and reality itself. Having journeyed into the quantum realm and glimpsed the probabilistic and observer-dependent nature of physical reality in Part 2, we now turn our focus directly to the observer itself, to consciousness. If quantum mechanics suggests that reality is not entirely out there, independent of measurement, then the nature of this measuring consciousness becomes even more crucial to understand. Is consciousness merely a passive receiver of sensory data, or does it actively shape and construct the very reality we experience? The philosophical tradition of idealism, in its various forms, posits that consciousness is not just a passive recipient, but rather the primary, or even sole, architect of reality. In its most radical form, idealism suggests that the external world exists only as a manifestation of mind, that to be is to be perceived, ses percipi, as famously phrased by philosopher George Berkeley. While such radical idealism is debated, the core idea that consciousness plays an active and formative role in our experience of reality resonates across various philosophical and scientific perspectives. Phenomenology, a school of philosophy founded by Edmund Husserl, emphasizes the importance of subjective experience and consciousness as the starting point for understanding reality. Phenomenologists argue that we cannot access a mind-independent external reality directly. All we ever experience is our own consciousness, our own phenomenal field of perceptions, thoughts, feelings, and intentions. Reality, for phenomenology, is fundamentally intentional, meaning it is always directed towards something, always experienced by a subject. René Descartes, a towering figure in Western philosophy, placed the subjective experience of consciousness at the very center of his philosophical system. In his quest for certainty, Descartes famously doubted everything that could be doubted: the reliability of senses, the existence of the external world, even the existence of his own body. However, he found one thing that he could not doubt: the very act of doubting itself, the awareness of his own thinking. This led him to his famous declaration, cogito, ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Descartes' cogito establishes the primacy of subjective consciousness as the foundation of knowledge and existence, at least for the individual experiencing that consciousness. It highlights the undeniable reality of our own inner world, our thoughts, feelings, and self-awareness, even if the external world remains uncertain. This emphasis on subjective experience has had a profound influence on Western thought, shaping not only philosophy, but also psychology and our understanding of the self. Modern neuroscience, while grounded in materialism and physicalism, also increasingly acknowledges the active and constructive role of consciousness in perception and reality formation. As we discussed in Part 1, our brains are not passive recorders, but active interpreters and predictors. This active interpretation is deeply intertwined with consciousness. Our conscious attention selects, filters, and organizes sensory information, shaping what we consciously perceive. Our conscious intentions and expectations can even influence our perception, as demonstrated by numerous psychological experiments. Furthermore, the very concept of qualia in philosophy of mind points to the inherently subjective and qualitative nature of conscious experience. Qualia are the what it is likeness of experience, the subjective feel of sensations, such as the redness of red, the taste of coffee, or the feeling of pain. These qualitative aspects of experience seem to be irreducible to purely objective, physical descriptions of brain states. They highlight the subjective, first-personal character of consciousness, the inner theater where our reality is experienced. Consciousness, therefore, is not merely a passive mirror reflecting an external world, but an active architect constructing our experienced reality. It selects, interprets, and shapes sensory information, infusing it with meaning, emotion, and personal significance. While the question of a mind-independent objective reality remains open, our exploration of the labyrinth of perception leads us to recognize the undeniable and profound role of the subjective observer, of consciousness, in shaping the world as we know it. In the parts that follow, we will continue to explore the depths of this mystery, delving into the enigma of sentience, the interconnected web, and the ultimate embrace of the unknown. Having explored the illusory nature of reality and the active role of the subjective observer in parts 1 to 3, we now confront perhaps the most profound and enduring mystery of all, sentience itself. What does it truly mean to be aware? What is this subjective, inner experience that we call consciousness, and how does it arise from the physical matter of the brain? This is the enigma of sentience, a puzzle that has captivated philosophers and scientists for centuries and continues to defy complete understanding. We intuitively know what it means to be conscious. It is the feeling of what it is like to experience the world, to have subjective sensations, thoughts, emotions, and self-awareness. It is the difference between being awake and asleep, between being responsive and unresponsive, between being present and absent from the world. Yet, despite this intuitive familiarity, the nature of consciousness remains deeply elusive. How does mere matter, however complexly organized, give rise to this rich, subjective inner life? Philosophers have grappled with the problem of consciousness for millennia. Dualists, like Descartes, proposed a fundamental separation between mind and matter, suggesting that consciousness is a non-physical substance distinct from the physical brain. Materialists, on the other hand, argue that consciousness is ultimately a product of physical processes in the brain, albeit a highly complex and poorly understood one. Panpsychists propose that consciousness, or proto-consciousness, may be a fundamental property of matter itself, present in varying degrees throughout the universe. Modern neuroscience has made tremendous progress in mapping brain activity and correlating neural processes with conscious experiences. Neuroimaging techniques like fMRI and EEG allow us to observe brain activity in real time and to identify neural correlates of consciousness, specific brain patterns that seem to be associated with conscious awareness. However, even with these advances, a fundamental explanatory gap remains. We can identify which brain regions are active when we are conscious, but we still lack a clear understanding of why and how this brain activity gives rise to subjective experience. This explanatory gap is famously known as the hard problem of consciousness, coined by philosopher David Chalmers. The easy problems of consciousness, according to Chalmers, are those that can be explained by standard scientific methods, such as how the brain processes sensory information, integrates information, or controls behavior. The hard problem, however, is of a different order of difficulty. It is the question of subjective experience itself. Why do physical processes in the brain give rise to any subjective experience at all, rather than proceeding in the dark, without any feeling or awareness? As David Chalmers himself articulated, the hard problem of consciousness is the problem of explaining how physical processes give rise to subjective experience. Consider again the qualia we discussed in Part 3, the subjective feel of sensations. Why does the stimulation of certain nerve fibers in our eyes give rise to the sensation of redness? Why does the activation of certain neurons in our brain produce the feeling of joy or sadness? Why are we not just philosophical zombies, beings who behave and function just like conscious humans, but lack any inner subjective experience whatsoever? Materialist theories can describe the neural correlates of consciousness, but they struggle to explain the emergence of qualia, the subjective what-it-is-likeness of experience. The enigma of sentience remains one of the greatest intellectual challenges of our time. Despite centuries of philosophical and scientific inquiry, we still lack a comprehensive and satisfying explanation for the very existence of subjective awareness. Is consciousness an emergent property of complex systems, a fundamental property of matter, or something else entirely? Is it a localized phenomenon confined to brains, or could it be more widespread in the universe? These questions lead us deeper into the labyrinth of perception, forcing us to confront the limits of our current understanding and to embrace the profound mystery of being aware, of being sentient beings in a universe that itself remains fundamentally enigmatic. In the parts to follow, we will continue to explore this labyrinth, delving into the interconnected web of reality and consciousness, and ultimately, to the acceptance of the inherent mystery at the heart of existence. Having explored the illusory nature of reality, the subjective observer, and the enigma of sentience in the previous parts, we now broaden our perspective to consider reality as a vast, interconnected web of relationships and interdependence. From the quantum entanglement of particles to the intricate ecosystems of our planet and the complex social networks of human societies, the universe reveals itself not as a collection of isolated objects, but as a dynamic and interwoven tapestry of connections. Quantum mechanics, which we touched upon in Part 2, provides a striking example of this interconnectedness at the most fundamental level of reality. Quantum entanglement demonstrates that particles can be linked in a non-local way, their fates intertwined regardless of spatial separation. This spooky action at a distance, as Einstein called it, suggests a deeper level of interconnectedness than classical physics allows, a web of correlations that transcends our intuitive notions of space and time. Moving beyond the quantum realm, we see interconnectedness manifested at every scale of existence. In ecosystems, organisms are intricately linked through food webs, symbiotic relationships, and nutrient cycles. Each living being plays a role in the delicate balance of the ecosystem, and changes in one part of the web can ripple through the entire system. The health of the forest depends on the health of the soil, the insects, the fungi, and the trees themselves, all interacting in a complex dance of interdependence. Human societies, too, are complex webs of interconnected relationships. Our economies, cultures, and technologies are built upon networks of communication, exchange, and cooperation. We are social beings, deeply dependent on each other for survival, well-being, and meaning. Our individual identities are shaped by our relationships with family, friends, communities, and cultures. We are nodes in a vast social web, constantly influencing and being influenced by the connections that surround us. Philosophical traditions across cultures have long emphasized this interconnected nature of reality. Buddhist philosophy, in particular, stresses the concept of interdependent origination, pratitya, the idea that all phenomena arise in dependence upon other phenomena. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything is conditioned by and connected to everything else. This principle of interdependence is seen as fundamental to understanding the nature of reality and the path to liberation. While I cannot pinpoint a single, universally agreed upon quote in exactly 3 words to attribute to Buddha, the essence of his teachings is permeated with this idea, often summarized as everything is connected, or all things are interdependent. These concise phrases capture the core of this profound philosophical insight. Ecological thinking further reinforces this understanding of interconnectedness in the context of our planet and biosphere. The Gaia hypothesis, for example, proposes that the Earth itself functions as a self-regulating system, a living organism in which all components, atmosphere, oceans, land, and living beings, are interconnected and contribute to maintaining a dynamic equilibrium. This perspective challenges the view of Earth as a mere collection of resources to be exploited, and instead emphasizes our role as part of a larger, living system, deeply dependent on its health and balance. The concept of networks has become increasingly central to understanding various aspects of reality in the 21st century. From the internet and social networks to neural networks in the brain and ecological networks in nature, we recognize that complex systems are often best understood not as hierarchical structures, but as decentralized, interconnected webs. These networks exhibit emergent properties, behaviors that arise from the interactions of their components, and are not reducible to the properties of individual nodes. This network thinking provides a powerful framework for understanding complexity and interconnectedness across diverse domains. Recognizing reality as an interconnected web has profound implications for our understanding of ourselves and our place in the world. It challenges the illusion of separateness, the feeling that we are isolated individuals distinct from our environment and each other. Instead, it invites us to see ourselves as integral parts of a larger whole, deeply embedded in a web of relationships and interdependence. This awareness of interconnectedness can foster a sense of responsibility, compassion, and a deeper appreciation for the delicate balance of life on our planet and in the cosmos. As we continue our journey through the Labyrinth of Perception in the final part, we will explore how embracing this interconnectedness can lead us to a more profound understanding and acceptance of the inherent mystery of existence. Having traversed the Labyrinth of Perception through 5 parts, exploring the illusion of reality, the quantum veil, the subjective observer, the enigma of sentience, and the interconnected web, we arrive not at a definitive answer, but at a profound acceptance of mystery itself. The labyrinth of perception, we discover, is not a puzzle to be solved, but a realm to be explored, a mystery to be embraced, a journey to be lived. Our exploration has revealed the limitations of our senses, the constructed nature of our perception, the probabilistic quantum reality, the active role of consciousness in shaping experience, the profound enigma of sentience, and the interconnectedness of all things. Each step deeper into the labyrinth has unveiled new layers of complexity, uncertainty, and wonder. We have glimpsed the shadows on the wall, peered through the quantum veil, recognized the subjective architect within, pondered the enigma of awareness, and felt the threads of the interconnected web. If we began our journey seeking definitive answers, we now understand that such answers may be perpetually elusive, perhaps even non-existent in the way we initially imagined. The nature of reality, the nature of consciousness, these may be mysteries that are inherently beyond the grasp of complete human comprehension. To demand definitive answers, to seek absolute certainty, may be to misunderstand the very nature of these profound questions, and to limit our capacity for wonder and awe. Instead of striving to escape the labyrinth, perhaps the true wisdom lies in learning to live within it, to navigate its winding paths with curiosity, humility, and an open mind. To embrace the mystery, not as a problem to be solved, but as an intrinsic and essential aspect of existence itself. To find beauty and meaning not in certainty, but in the ongoing process of exploration, questioning, and experiencing the ever-unfolding richness of reality. This acceptance of mystery is not a resignation to ignorance, but rather a mature and nuanced understanding of the limits of human knowledge and the boundlessness of the unknown. It is a recognition that the universe, in its vastness and complexity, may always hold secrets beyond our current capacity to decipher, and that consciousness, in its subjective depth and enigma, may always retain an element of irreducible mystery. Some of the greatest thinkers have pointed towards this acceptance of mystery as a mark of wisdom and maturity. Instead of fearing the unknown, they encourage us to embrace it as a source of wonder, creativity, and ongoing learning. Carl Jung, the renowned psychologist, captured this sentiment when he said, "I do not deny God's existence, but I insist on the absolute unknowability of God." Whether one interprets God literally or metaphorically, Jung's statement highlights the inherent limits of human comprehension when confronted with ultimate mysteries. It is not about denying the existence of something profound, but acknowledging its nature as fundamentally beyond our full grasp. To live in the labyrinth of perception, therefore, is to cultivate a mindset of open inquiry, intellectual humility, and a deep appreciation for the unknown. It is to recognize that our understanding of reality and consciousness is always evolving, always incomplete, and always open to new perspectives and discoveries. It is to find joy in the journey itself, in the ongoing exploration of the labyrinth, rather than fixating on the elusive promise of a final, definitive answer. It is in this embrace of mystery, in this willingness to dwell in the questions themselves, that we may find a deeper and more meaningful engagement with the wonder and awe of existence. The symphony of beginnings and endings, the paradox of emptiness, the dual nature of humanity, the mirror of time, the labyrinth of choice. All these themes converge in this final realization. Reality is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived, perceived, and endlessly explored.